So in this quick tutorial, I'm going to be showing you a few little things that you're going to encounter while editing a segment and that you definitely need to know how to use. So the first thing that we're going to learn is how to use Gaussian Blur. So you're going to select the image that you want, you're going to drag it onto the timeline, you're going to drag the exact same image, and you're just going to stack it right on top of it. So now you're going to select your bottom image, you're going to go over to here where it says Effect Controls, and then right here under Motion, it's going to say Scale. You're going to hover over that number, or you can manually type it in. You're going to hover over that number, click it, and then drag it towards the right until it fills up the entire screen. There we go. So now we have the bottom layer zoomed in. We have our image that we want to focus on top. So now we're going to go over here. We're going to go to Effects. Then, if you want, you can just manually type it in, and we're going to be looking for Gaussian Blur right here. Under Video Effects, Blur and Sharpen, we have Gaussian Blur. So now you're going to select, drag, and drop on the bottom layer, the bottom image right here. Make sure that image is selected. You're going to go over to here where our effect controls are at. You're going to scroll down. Right here, it says Gaussian Blur and your blurriness. So then you're going to do the same thing, hover, and then you're just going to drag it to the right until you get the right amount of blur. Obviously, we don't want to go like this. It's a little bit way too much, and we don't want to go like that because we can still see kind of like the defined, image behind it. We want to kind of meet a little bit in the middle, so I would say like about right there is pretty good. Okay, so now that we have the Gaussian blur on the image behind it, we want to use keyframes so that we can slowly zoom in into the top image. So now you have to have the top image selected. You're going to go over here where Effect Controls, make sure it's already centered. That looks pretty good. You're going to select the stopwatch right next to Scale, and that's going to create your first keyframe. So you're going to see this pop up right here, and you'll see it right here. So that's going to be your first keyframe. Then you're going to go all the way to the end of the image, and then you're just going to adjust it slightly. So let's see if 120, how that looks. Okay, pretty good. So we don't want it to be a super dramatic zoom in, or if you wanted to, you could reverse it and slowly zoom out as well. So we can just watch it back to see. Pretty good, nice, slow, and easy. Awesome. But this is already starting out maybe like a little bit too small, like way too small. So I can just make sure I'm on that keyframe. You're on top of that keyframe when this right here where my mouse is blue. So we can just go straight to adjusting this to maybe 130. Let's see how that looks. Drop it down to 120. Obviously these numbers are going to be different for any image, so you just really have to play around with it. So I'm just going to use my arrow keys on my keyboard until right there, perfect, until I hit that keyframe. And because I started at like 120, I think it was, I'm going to move here to 130 at the end. So that way you can see it, play it back. It's a nice, slow, gradual zoom in. So that's how you're going to use Gaussian Blur. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys how to do is link your audio and synchronize it. So when you use voice memos for an interview, and let's just say your lapel wasn't working or it came out really crappy, you're going to use your voice memo to match it up and to recover it. So like in this interview, the audio is super duper quiet. You can barely hear her when she is talking. Yeah, like I can't even hear it on my laptop. It's practically nat sound. It's really, really quiet. So what you're going to do is you're going to have your voice memo right under your actual interview. You're going to highlight both. Here, I'll unmute that channel. You're going to highlight both. You're going to double click. You're going to scroll down, and right here where it says Synchronize, you're going to click on Synchronize. You're going to make sure audio is selected. You're going to press OK. So now I'm going to press the minus key on my keyboard to zoom out. So right here, this is where my voice memo is actually going to be for my interview. So I can just zoom in here. And now this is perfectly lined up. And so now I'm able to use my voice memo audio. So I can just cut this part off. Just cut that part off. right here on my actual interview video, I'm going to double click this. I'm going to scroll down to where it says unlink. Then you can delete this audio, highlight both. You're going to select link, and now you have your actual interview video connected with your new voice memo audio. And now whenever you drag and move it, it'll be linked as one. So that is how you synchronize or link your audio. Next, I'm going to be showing you guys something you've definitely seen either in the show or on social media, which is something I've recently incorporated into the most recent buzz.
Oliver also went to Twitter to say, "I'm officially going into retirement. Thank you."
So there you have the Gaussian blur in works behind that. And then you also see where you're pulling out the statement that you're reading in your voiceover, and that's getting zoomed in. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to do that. It's actually really simple. It just might seem like a lot of steps. So first you're going to have, where the Gaussian blur in that back, you're going to have your base image right here. Then you're going to take the exact same image and just drag it on top. So the one behind it, first I'm just going to zoom, just make this picture a little bit bigger. There we go. And both of these images need to be the exact same size. So scale and position needs to be the exact same at the very beginning. So now I'm going to go to Effects, and I already have Gaussian blur over here. You're going to put the Gaussian blur, drag and drop it on the bottom picture, because this is the one that when you watch it through, it's going to blur behind it. For the top image, you're going to use the crop effect. So you're going to go over to Effects, and you're going to search crop. You're going to drag and drop that on top, and now you're going to have this. So first we're going to crop the top image. So I just want to isolate a quote that he wrote in his tweet at the bottom. After your top image is selected, turn off the video 1 layer just so we can focus on our crop. So you're going to take here, you're going to adjust it until you get your quote. This is right there, and then the bottom. There we go. So now that we have our crop, okay, so now after we've cropped the top picture, we're going to go up here, take this off, and now obviously it depends on your audio of where you're lining up your keyframes, when you want the blur to start, when you want the zoom in to start for your top picture to isolate that quote that you're talking about. So it all just depends on when you're talking about it. So I'm just going to wait a few seconds here. First, I'm just going to start my blur. So I'm going to have the bottom picture selected. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click on the stopwatch to create my first keyframe. Then I just want it to be like maybe a few seconds, and then I'll stop it. And then I'll adjust the blurriness. Right, yeah, like about right there. And so now you see this isolated quote on top, because the top one obviously doesn't have the blur, because we're going to be zooming into that. So now you can rewind, play it through, see how that blur looks. There we go. You want to make sure it adjusted so when you look at that blur, it's a nice smooth transition. It's not super sharp or abrupt, or it's not super held out and takes forever. There we go. So now I'm going to go, I can look over here where effect controls where those keyframes are to see where I want to line up and start the zoom in of the top picture where that is currently cropped. Go about right, yeah, right there. And now I'm going to be selecting the top image. You're going to go over here and you're going to be selecting scale and position. So now you've created your first keyframe over here where it's going to start. Then after watching the blur, you're going to find where you want it to be fully zoomed in by, what part. So we're just going to watch it. The blur is happening there, and that's a little bit after that blur ends. And that's where I want it to already be fully zoomed in. So now you can adjust it over here in effect controls, or what I do sometimes is I'll just click on it. I'll just zoom in it like this because sometimes it's just a little bit easier. Make sure that is centered. Okay, so now we're going to watch it back to see how it looks, to see if we need to adjust any of those keyframes. There we go. If anything, I could just slow down this zoom in. I might not even want to zoom in that much, but I can just select these keyframes that I want to move, and just by scooting them forward, it'll slow down that zoom in. There we go. That's a little bit softer, it's a little bit slower, and so that works. Obviously, depending on what you're talking about, or what you're showing, or what quote, or anything like that, you're just going to have to adjust the timing and move around the keyframes till you get exactly what you're looking for and what works best with what you have. Okay, so that's it for this video, but if there's anything that you still want to know about or haven't learned yet, or need a tutorial about, just feel free to let me know, and I'll make one for you guys.